of the owner that owns the property, then the courts will disregard the notice to owner requirement because they're saying, look, you knew about it. Okay, you hired the person. The only person who would have received the notice to owner would have been you as well. So it's the common identity theory. If you have to fall within that, you're talking about a lot of bucks to argue the exception to the notice to owner requirement because it's an exception to the rule. So if you get the notice to owner out there, you save yourself a big headache and arguments. Because I'm telling you right now, I would defend, and I have defended, and I've also lost because the other side was able to prove that my big-time developer was also the big-time contractor. Same phone numbers, same address, same staff. I was just hoping that the other person wouldn't know about the common identity theory because it's a true little. It's difficult for people to find, but if you find it and you know about that exception, you can fall within it. But it doesn't happen all too often. Those who subsequently come into privity with the owner. All right, so you weren't hired by the owner at first, but then the general contractor gets fired, the owner wants to take over the project, and now hires you to finish your portion of the work. You never served the notice to owner, you're excused. You were subsequently became in direct privity with the owner. If it happens and you screwed up before, you're lucky. But that's not normal. That's not usual, but it is an exception. Contractors in direct contractual privity is with the owner. They don't need to serve a notice to owner. We talked about that. And contracts with owner's agents. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about the owner hires a general contractor, because that would almost look like an agent. I'm talking about the contracting party was not an independent contractor. In other words, let's assume that the construction manager for the owner signs a contract with you. Or somebody who's part of the corporation. I'm looking for somebody who has the authorized agent and actual authority to sign on behalf of the owner and bind the owner directly. This is not something that I want to be arguing, because then I got to show all sorts of exceptions to the notice to owner requirement. Again, it's easier to serve the notice to owner, but assuming that the person that hired you isn't an independent contractor, such as a general contractor, in other words, the owner really doesn't have control over that general contractor. Their arm's length transaction. Well, what's going to happen is that I may be able to argue that the notice to owner requirement was excused because technically the person who hired me actually was the owner. I'm going to be looking for things such as who's paying me. I'm going to be looking for anything that I can to see whether or not there's an agency that was created by the person that hired me. But hopefully, again, you're just serving notice to owners, and you're eliminating any of these possible exceptions to the exception that I'm going to have to argue if you fail to serve the time. Computing the time for the notice to owners. The notice to owner must be served no later than 45 days after commencing. We talked about that. And it generally starts from the first day the liener delivers materials or supplies labor to the job site, even though the supplier may have sold them over the counter on an earlier date, and there's a case for that. And this is a seminal case of Stunkel versus Gazebo. And that's a Florida Supreme Court case. Again, notwithstanding that you sold it over the counter, I had one question. I contract for it on X date. When should I start serving my notice to owner? Serve it as early as possible. Because let me tell you what else I encounter. I'm going to encounter another attorney who's going to be raising up the argument. Let's say you're close. Well, I'm going to have to educate that attorney. Hey, you fall at the time frame according to the Supreme Court case actually begins when it's actually delivered to the project, or when the labor begins at the project, not from the time that the materials may have been sold over the counter, not from the time that the contract was signed. It actually begins from, that's when commencement actually begins. Once again, the exception is for specially manufactured goods. Actual delivery is not required. Timing begins once fabrication has begun. As far as service of these notice to owners, if you ask asked me to do a notice to owner for you, I'd say absolutely not. Notice to owner companies do that. So, and they keep track of all that paperwork. Could I do it? Of course I could do it. I just don't want to do it. There's a way that they have to be served. Let's assume that you're getting really close, and I only say this but just in case. You got to. There's 713.18. They revise it like almost every other year. I got to read it every time I want to serve something because it's certified mail, actual personal delivery, overnight or second-day delivery, or posting as a last resort. In my opinion, when they say posting as a last resort, I think that you need to show that you try to do the other methods first. So if you're getting close to your time requirements, unfortunately, I always have to consult that statute as well. I have had to post documents on a project. I take pictures of it. I take pictures of the street address. I take pictures of the house. Sometimes you just get bunched up against time. It happens. But the best thing is just be timely and have a notice to owner company to serve. It's a lot easier. Now, warning. I just want you to also know about this. If an owner receives a final contractor's affidavit from a general contractor and then pays its final payment to that general contractor before you serve your notice to owner, and even if you're within your 45 days, you will lose your lien rights. It's not a perfect system. This doesn't happen too frequently at all, but this would require a general contractor committing a third-degree felony and lying, and also executing a false affidavit and committing perjury. So there would be 2 criminal statutes against that contractor for serving a false affidavit. Well, what do I mean by that? So again, this is what would happen. This is a way to knock out your lien rights, and this is again why I implore you to get those notice to owners in as soon as you can. If you're a sub or somebody that's required to serve a notice to owner, again, this is how you could potentially get cut out, and that it would be the general contractor gives a final contractor's affidavit to the owner. The affidavit says, I'm asking you for the final payment of $20,000. There's nobody else that remains unpaid. I paid all my suppliers and my subs. Please give me the $20,000. The owner looks at his list of notice to owners, says, okay, you paid everybody. I'm allowed to rely upon this final contractor's affidavit. And then gives the check for $20,000, the final payment to the general contractor. You're cut out. The owner's allowed to rely upon that final contractor's affidavit. So, just know about that. Next page, we have a cartoon here, and this is going to dovetail into our liens. And this is you got Bob Vila in this cartoon, or something that looks like Bob Vila. It says, "Today on this old house, we're going to perform some overdue repairs. Let's meet the homeowners. We don't have any money, Norm." And then you got the owner saying, "I blew our chance to be on TV." How did I blow our chance to be on TV? Well, if you don't have money, you're going to get lien. That's how it dovetails in. I just thought it was a cute cartoon. And I'm going to go through. It's this page and the next page that are going to... This page is when it says claim of lien is just an example of what a claim of lien looks like. The next page is what we're going to be going through. The blank spaces are basically spaces that have to be filled in with information that comes from you, as far as what's going to be. That's the pertinent information that I'm looking at as far as a lien when I'm examining it to see whether it's a valid lien or not. You have the name of the liener. In other words, if you're liening, it's you, and the address where notice or process may be served. In other words, I got